Good afternoon, folks. This is Nikhil Shah. I'm going to be the coach for the session today. Let's give it a few more minutes as folks are still joining.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. All right. So folks, today we are going to talk about sustainability. I have a few more people waiting in the waiting room. Let me accept them. So once again, welcome all. I know you have a series of sessions going on with Havish and the folks. Today we are going to talk about very interestingly on a sustainable topic. As you all are getting ready for your next wave of your academic and life career, this topic brings a lot of importance. It is not just about doing good for the environment. It is actually a business decision. It is about somehow in this setup, I have to admit the people. It's not automatic, so I might have to get diverted for a few seconds here and there. I would like to make these sessions as interactive as possible as we go along. Allow me to share the screen and then we'll get going. All right. There you go. We have more people. Smita are coming. Just confirm, guys, if you can see my screen properly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we'll have a really good, exciting time for next hour and a half, where we're going to talk about sustainability. I am very sure that each and every one of you have some or other concept or definition of it. Uh, what I'm going to do is convert this conversation into a technology and business sense. As you go along, as you look at the future career uh, from a different perspective, how this sustainability should be considered in your business or in your company practices. So before we start, can I get a just quick sense of the folks who can, I think we have about 33 folks on the call. If you guys can just give me your prior background, whether what you have done, commerce, arts, engineering, mechanical, whatever that you have, just type on the chat window, just to get the sense of it. And Shivani, Shohib, okay. You can also explain computer science or engineering, mechanical or whatever, because we'll be talking about various case studies, okay, and LLB. Super. BBA. Very good. As you can see, we have very diverse team. We have petroleum engineering, pharmacy, public administration, mathematics. I think that's what makes Shriram quite unique. As you know, a lot of US educational systems, they do deliberately promote the diversity in the team. Very good. If you happen to hear from somebody that I have missed to admit them, just alert me on the chat window. I will try to bring them in. Okay. So before we go deeper, let's first define the sustainability just to make sure that we have levels set among ourselves. Sustainability is basically meeting the need of current generation without compromising the future generation, right? In other words, if we means our current generation, if we are greedy enough, if we keep absorbing all kind of resources at our disposal, what is going to left for future generation is we don't know, right? That is a big question mark. And for many years, scientists, environmentalists, they all been warning that global warming is not science fiction, it is real, right? And as you know that those who are in Bombay, they experiences this time in a very severe way. But more importantly, if you know that in Germany recently, which is one of the quite advanced country, they were been completely shocked by the flood has happened and just swept the villages and rural place parts of Western Germany in just matter of few hours. And Germany deliberately has blamed global warming right on this, and that is what we call it unsustainable environment. Throughout the presentation, you will see that I have put this logo. Wherever you see this logo, it's kind of trying to indicate that it is somewhat or kind of going towards sustainable, or they're trying hard to follow the sustainable practice. Yes, heat wave is classic example. Fires are frequent fires happening in the forest. That's another big example. There are three main pillars of sustainability. One on economic side, environmental side, and social side, right? If you look at many times, these three pillars has been commonly known as or commonly been referred to as profit, planet, and people, right? And that's why you see that whenever sustainability has been talked about, you should keep this framework in mind, right? People, planet, and profit. Uh, Once again, people, our environment, and the economic aspects of it. So sustainability try to bridge the gap and trying to keep all three kind of uh, in a sync, because all three are very important pillars. Now, just keep that in mind that this is the framework that we are going to talk about today, about sustainability. And as I said, just let's don't look at this all goody talk that let's be green, less consume, less water, less recycle, all of that. We are going to look at some very specific use cases, and hopefully that would address many of your prior background. And as Shobit mentioned, right, that heat wave is another example. I like, you guys, whatever comes to your mind, feel free to put it on the screen and in your chat window. Uh, we're going to look at the big picture. We're going to look at some sustainability framework, and I'm going to spend plenty of time on covering various case studies, various businesses that we can look. Some of the businesses are something which I know firsthand, and I was part of their evaluation, some startups, and we'll talk about how they've really done well for themselves. So let's first talk about data. As slide suggests, in 2021, we're going to have 50 zettabyte of data. That's over all the data on the planet. Equivalent would be, the size would be 50 zettabyte. Now, just to get the magnitude of zettabyte, as some of you might know, that it is 10 raised to 21. 10 raised to 21 bytes, that is 1 zettabyte. That means when we talk about gigabyte, right, that is 10 raised to 9. When we say that our hard drive on your laptop or your desktop capacity is 1 terabyte, that is 10 raised to 12, right? Here we're talking about 10 raised to 21. As you can of course, we all know that additional zero means what magnitude we are talking about, right? So this is minuscule stuff. And the another important point is lots of companies, almost 75% of the enterprises are going to use some kind of data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence to process this data. Now, why I'm talking about the data today? I want to tell you about 4 key pillars that is going to be massively relevant in this coming decade, or particularly next 5 years. Let's talk about first data. We know data is massive. Just to give you perspective, back in 2016, just 4 or 5 years back, on an average, approximately 1.8 billion. See, world population is about 7 billion. We're talking about almost 1.8 billion images, photographs were getting uploaded on internet every day. Now that is back then. In last 5 years, all our cameras and phones has gone up with the resolution to almost 25 meg or 50 meg. And some people have the notorious habits of taking image, the photograph of the same scenario or same situation 10 times and just dumping on the WhatsApp. When you do that, we have no idea. It just looks pretty easy, right? It's just click of a button. But the environmental impact it causes, the traffic it generates on the internet, the switches, the air conditioning, cooling, everything what required to transmit that data bytes, that is massive, which we many times we fail to notice. But more importantly, what I want to talk about, data is going to be the very important commodity or one of the, I would say, most valuable commodity of this coming century. Here, we're not talking about the regular data. We're talking about historical data. And I'll explain why in the next slide. So the bold statement is data is new oil. Because if we all know that in last 500 years, the whole transaction system started with barter system, right? And then some precious stones, and then gold, and then fiat currencies, which is like US dollars or Indian rupees or Pakistani rupees or Indonesian rupiah or whatever it is. That all world has printed their own fiat currencies. And last few years, we have seen the growth of cryptocurrencies. Nevertheless, we know that many wars happened in last 50 years. I mean, more or less, you can say that there was oil element was involved. So oil, which driving the world economy, right? We all know that currently the price in India, the oil price in India is 100 rupees range, uh, and it was quite low when the COVID was in full swing last year. So we all also know that the world, some of the few countries in the world, they controls the oil of supply in the world, and they decide when they control the supply. That means the oil price can be manipulated. Oil price goes up. So world is kind of driven by oil. And what I'm going to say that the next wave of the world is going to be driven by data. Let's see next. As I noticed, some of you have a computer science background, and I'm sure you would have exposed to some kind of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So in the previous slide, we talked about data as a oil. And here we are talking about AI/ML or artificial intelligence or machine learning. We are talking, referring to them as a new refineries. So why refineries? What refinery do? They extract the oil, and then refineries does classify, put in the crude oil or bitumen or gas or petrol or diesel. So all kind of stuff gets separated. So basically with refinery, you making the sense from the data or from the oil. Similarly, machine learning and AI/ML, in general, this is broadly speaking, many times we call it data science, or the people who are doing or experts in AI/ML, they call data scientists. What is their role? Their role is to make sense from the data. That means from abundant of data that we talked about, how do we make actionable decision out of the data, right? And that is why we call it AI/ML as a new refineries, right? Now let's look at another angle, 5G. As many of you probably from Delhi, and you know that Airtel's headquarters is in Delhi. In my previous corporate life, I have worked in telecom sector and software engineering for almost 25 years, and I have instrumentally designed lots of global networks across the world, a lot of telecom networks across the world. I was in US for about 14 years. And interestingly, I have seen the evolution from 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, and now 5G is now catching the wave across the world. So let's look at what is 5G. Now we can look at 5G as a new transport. Why I say new transport? Can anybody tell me what's or whatever the observations or reading that you might have? What does 5G brings on the table, perhaps compared to 4G, or maybe you may have some guess.
The transmission rate will decrease, so the time will eventually decrease for sharing data.
So speed, sorry, can you repeat your point? Is it about speed or something else you said?
The transmission of data will be the time for that is taken for the transmission of data will decrease.
Awesome. Yes. So it is obviously going to be much faster, as Nitin and Sachin mentioned, and as you said, speed is one, but more importantly, the time. I think the technical term for time is going to be the latency or delay in a very simplest form. So basically, for one piece of information or one byte of the information to leave the network and you get the response back. For example, you type a message on a WhatsApp or Telegram, it travels the world to, and one of your friend or your colleague is sitting in other parts of the world, and you get the response in a literally matter of seconds or even 1 or 2 seconds. So at that piece of information that left your mobile phone, it went to a nearest mobile tower. From there, it went to optical fiber. From there, underlying optical fiber or some kind of cables. And from there, it went to Chennai or Bombay or wherever that was an international transit points. From there, it went into submarine cables under the ocean. In some cases, can also travel through satellite communication, and then it travel through some intermediary points. For example, in Europe or Germany or UK, wherever it will be handed over to another telecom operator, and every point that's handed over, it's been looked upon whether it is destined to some IP address which is in US, and that again data would travel. It reached to Boston or New York on East Coast, and from there that it will again be obtained from the broadband network, and then whatever they will do look up that which user it's destined to, and then if it's the person is sitting in Washington DC, the data would be transmitted there, and they will automatically locate the nearest tower where your friend's mobile phone is connected to, and that bits of information will be displayed on his phone. Then whatever the response he gets is again travel back in the reverse path, again in a similar logic. Everything that I just explained, and I have understood this is 20 years back, how this whole telecom and how the data transmission was. It's quite fascinating world. But my point is, for the people who are not from that field, for them, it's a black box. They don't know what's going on behind. Everything that I just explained, which takes number of decision points in between, everything happened in matter of seconds, 1 or 2 seconds, right? Or even less. So all this transmission happens on a millisecond or nanoseconds capacity. And that is what 5G is going to bring compared to 4G. One of the interesting data point is going to be low latency. In a 4G network, the latency was almost 40 to 50 millisecond. I'm going to put on this chat window. Milliseconds, right? Which is a 1 upon hundredth of, 1 upon thousands of the second, right? Now in 5G, it is going to be reduced to 5 milliseconds, right? So the latency improvement of almost 90%, right? So it is much, much, much quicker and faster. Now, what are the applications? As Chandra mentioned that IoT, yes, industrial IoT, Internet of Things or sensor communication. One of the classic example I can tell you is a driverless car. Now, we might many times laugh that we are still in the odd and even numbers economy in the India on the on the roads. On the other hand, many of countries are already doing trials. I'm sure many of you know that Tesla is already sold the car. A couple of my friends in US, they own Tesla, and they've showed me video a couple of months back where they're completely hands-free and their cars is overtaking the truck on the US national highways. Right? So this is reality, right? Now we're not talking about future. So driverless car is reality. Driverless truck, which is another big market, particularly in some of the countries in the world where they relies on the import economy. Even in China, in US, the US flag is also made in China, right? So transportation is a big thing, and the new world, the drivers who are aging, the new generation do not want to work in that industry where they have to spend 70% of their life on the road, on the trucks. So to sustain that business model, there is a driverless truck. You can Google up and you will find amazing amount of innovations are happening. On a whole truck would be driven from point A to point B without driver. Anyway, why I'm talking about all of this, the 5G would make that happen, right? When you are on the road, when you are in the cross section, you're going at 100 miles per hour speed, which is 160 kilometer per hour. At that time, of course, each car or each truck would have massive amount of sensors and self-driven brakes and everything. But for a couple of decisions, it is important that they are all connected through a 5G network where latency is very less. So information can be transmitted. The other great example could be the remote surgeries, right? We know that in India, many people lost their life because they cannot reach to Delhi or Bombay or Ahmedabad or some major cities in a time. And even though there is expertise available in those cities, so many times, even though facilities are there, but expertise are not there. So there is another big applications of it, that heart specialist who has a unique skill would be sitting in Delhi, and he will be just doing hands movement or instructing, and in a matter of milliseconds, the instruction or live video feed would be seen by the doctor sitting in village and will be able to do emergency operations. So all this stuff require a very low latency. Even additional second of delay can be a fatal, right? So that's why I say, look at 5G as a new transport. Yes, telemedicine. The last point, how many of you know about blockchain? Just if you know, just type B on the screen. Just if you have any little bit of idea about blockchain. Again, I'm not talking about Bitcoin, okay? I'm talking about blockchain. So there's two different things. All right, cool. So I see 6-7 people have exposure. So nice, good. I think many of you would know. So what is blockchain? In a one-line summary, I would say blockchain is a new settlement system. Okay. When I say settlement, what is it? See, it brings the trust between two parties, and that is why I use word settlement. Blockchain brings immutability. Immutability means unchangeable. Second, transparency in the transactions, and the traceability. All three are important and they are different. They are talking about three different things. And that is what blockchains brings on the table. I'll give you some examples, those who are not aware about blockchain, but just to cover the one myth that Bitcoin and blockchain are two different things. Yes, Bitcoin is one of the first application of blockchain, but world doesn't end there. There are hundreds, if not thousands of applications are out there which are being deployed in the world as we speak, right? So between two parties, in my opinion, if you look at the world from, let's say, 14th century, right? If you look at the world in 14th century, every century has solved some problem. For example, in the 14th century, when British Empire or Britishers were kind of quite ahead in the game and they are kind of started ruling the world and whatnot, at that time, one of the big gap in the world was knowledge gap, because there was no telephone, there was no mobile phone, there was no printing press, there was no internet, there is no wireless network. So there was no way the information was being passed from one person to another person, right? This only when the people talk to each other. There was not even much transport available at that time. So one of the big innovation happened in 14th century was the printing press, which I think believe happened around 1449 or 1447. Now, printing press brought a massive innovation, books and newspapers and whatnot, and that has started filling up the knowledge gap. In the 15th century, we can say that automation, right? For example, people started, weaving the clothes and, but it was all manual. And there was a knitting machine, the circular knitting machine. Those who are from textile industry, they would know. It was innovated. In fact, even today, more or less, some fundamental principles are still remain same, which was invented back in 15th century. And so I would say there was a big gap and that was filled by innovations like that. So I can call it as an automation gap or manual labor gap. So I won't go into all centuries, but look at the 19th century, one of the big gap was the communication, right? People used to rely on the water transport, and it will take 1.5 months before your your tapal or whatever your post would physically travel, and then air transport came and whatnot. But when in the event of wireless communication and internet, we have literally settled the communication gap, and now it is in matter of seconds. So what is a gap in 20th century? One of the gap is, in my opinion, it is a trust gap. See, today, if I want to start a new business with anybody else, right, what happens? First of all, people say whether we should have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement between the two companies. We should have, non-compete agreement that the company B wouldn't directly approach the clients of company A, right? So there is a mistrust. And in fact, the world has evolved in such a way that having a mistrust is a common, right? And that is why the settlement and the third parties, or we can call it intermediaries or middlemen, that's a fancy word of, intermediary is a fancy word for middleman. So middlemen's like bank, right? So for example, if I wanted to, if I buy some cake, like I ordered some wedding cakes for some of my friend, I ordered 100 cakes from Smita, for example, and I need to pay, 20,000 rupees to Smita. And Smita and I don't know each other. So either she would expect me to pay through, Paytm or a credit card or cash. But if I give her a check, there is some resistance, right? That she wouldn't know that whether the check would be, properly, or it is not a fake, or whether there'll be enough balance or not. So, but there is somewhat trust. Like if the check is from ICICI Bank or HDFC Bank or SBI, then Smita would know that, okay, I think there is a intermediary, which is a bank in this case. And we know that there are laws are very stringent, that if the check bounces, there are some severe penalties and whatnot. So in this case, what happened, that bank has acted as an intermediary between myself and Smita. So that is a transaction. But in a larger world, we can't be relying on the intermediaries. Intermediaries, many times they are slow. It is expensive. In many cases, they do charge commissions and whatnot. What blockchains is essentially trying to bring on the table is removing this middleman, or trying to limit the impact of the middleman on the transactions, right? But when you do that transactions, when you don't have middleman, who would be a broker? So that's the point, that blockchain as a technology has such an inherent capability that it brings the transactions between the two parties not changeable. That means nobody can deny once it is agreed upon. There is a transparency into it. And if something needs to be traced back to the origin, you can trace it back. That is why I said these 3 points are important. Now, why are we talking about these 4 points? Data, AIML, 5G, blockchain, right? In my humble opinion, these are quite a disruptive forces of next 5 years. Can anybody give me example of disruptiveness or any disruptive innovations that you can think of? Or it can be very simple innovations. While you guys are thinking on it, see, what does disruptive innovation do? It literally has a power of wiping off the traditional business. I can give you many examples in the world that one of them is a Kodak. Kodak was a leader in analog cameras, right? They were in early days, some of you may not even have seen those cameras, where you take a picture, there's a roll that you have to put, black color roll. Then you take that roll after you 24 photographs has been taken. And then people are carefully taking the pictures, right? By the time one roll is over, it may take a couple of months. These days, people will even take 24 images in a matter of 3 minutes. So at that time, and then you take a roll, give it to a dark room, some photo studio, and they will develop the roll, and they will give you the print images of those pictures, right? Kodak was the market leader, and they didn't change, and their business model wiped off. In fact, in 2012, Kodak applied for the bankruptcy, right? Later on, they revived their business model, but so these are the disruptive innovations. The digital camera is a disruptive innovation. Sachin, yes, excellent example. Netflix is a disruptive innovation to a typical broadcasting industries, right? We notice that even during the lockdown, Netflix of the world or Hotstars of the world, they have fulfilled the gap of entertainment going to the theaters and whatnot. One of the very simple example I can tell you is email, right? Email was a disruptive innovation to our postcards, or LED bulb is another disruptive innovation to that our typical old 15 volt, 60 volt color. So they're basically completely wiping off the old technologies. So these technologies, what I'm talking about, they have a powerful way that they were going to bring major disruption in the business models in the coming years. Now, what is our role as a new technologies or new industrialists or new employees of the new organizations, that we look for a sustainable use cases in these industries. Let me give a very simple example so that I can make my point. So blockchain, as some of you already know, in a very simple terms, blockchain is a simple database. I wouldn't say simple. Blockchain is a quite complex database, which is between the untrusted parties. They can come to agreement on a common state without having the approval from the middleman, right? Let's look at this quick video, and then I'll come back to that. See, so you guys, so Achuk is one of the company formed out of Ahmedabad that I know of, where the material that they have patent in US and India patent has been approved already, and they're spending in another 43 countries. And that material has capacity to shut up the fire much quicker and without any absorbing much of water damage. And it's been validated in labs in many countries in the world. The valuation of the company, 150 crore right now, when they are just starting to build a lot of partnership with the industry to dissipate this material with fire extinguisher and many other things. So there's a classic example, right? Solving major problems of the fire, where we know that, as data suggests, every one life is getting lost in India at every 20 minutes. And the damage because of the fire is just phenomenal. So this is, let's look at another example.
Air pollution reaches more than 80% in Metro Manila.
As air pollution levels in the British
we should see a huge environmental
And
impact.
according to the World Health Organization, even trigger lung
And so
cancer.
Delhi, they're once again topping the pollution
Toxic
chart.
gas in
Situation in
London.
Beijing, the air being so dirty. Records.
Air Inc. is about capturing air pollution before it enters the environment from your cars, from your trucks, from your diesel generators that are spitting out this particulate matter, and then converting that into inks of various sorts.
We did the initial research and prototyping for this idea at the MIT Media Lab. For the last 3 years, we have been getting our hands dirty on the roads of Bangalore to solve this problem. After we are done capturing air pollution, we take it through a purification process, and then we treat it with solvents to create printing inks.
So essentially, what is it? You are the waste which we are really afraid of, right? We know in Delhi or even Beijing or many parts of the world where I travel, the sky turns into smoky by the evening, right? And it's getting to a very dangerous level that it is probably not eventually going to be healthy for humans to breathe that air. Now, which is something completely avoidable or something we want to avoid to breathe in, use that and turn into the ink, because ink actually requires a lot of carbons to produce. And they have done a very massive campaign in the world where some of the most phenomenal artists in the world, they were added in the campaign, and they did some really good creative work, and has got a lot of publicity to this campaign or this work.
The last 3 years, we have been inks.
To be able to paint and create without a negative effect on nature is an awesome idea. I'm so into it.
There's so much pollution that just half an hour can paint an entire pair of shoes.
I'm excited to work with something, an ink that will merge both together, beauty and environmental awareness, a way to advance humanity and to save the space around us.
And turn it into something beautiful, something that everyone uses, as common as inks.
So every stroke on paper that you make is essentially a quantification of that
technology and bring Air Ink to as many people as.
Right, so I'm just fast forwarding just to save some time, but you got the idea, right? That is very classic example of something which is from the pollution you convert into a very successful business venture, and which is needed every minute. Everything we do, we touch ink on a daily basis, right? Let me give some of the few other examples about sustainable business. These are all success stories. So Patagonia, for example, which is one of the most successful sustainable clothing brand in the sports and outdoor. Basically, they've been doing environmental friendly activities for last 20 years. So they conduct 1% of the company's revenue to go to environmental organizations where they organize workshops and they teach how to repair their own clothes and belongings, or even they're not their own brands, it could be somebody else's brand that teaches that and encourage the sustainable way of basically, continue to use rather than just throw away. So one of the things that CEO had mentioned, that outdoor clothing brands would they completely be CO2 neutral by 2025. Some of the other examples, I'm going to go quickly, you can just search it up later on, but I want to highlight that business sustainability doesn't mean just doing good to the environment, but it is doing well for your finance as well. Now this Tony's Choco Colony, that company which is believe in a fair trade and free from the slave work. This touched the people element of the sustainability, right? So they basically calculate the true social cost of their chocolate bars and they publish their results. Basically, any production, see, cocoa is one of the very interesting commodity, how it's been procured. And it's basically saying that it's completely free from many social impact and environmentally free. This too good to go. This is, by the way, what I'm showing you is all very successful companies been ranked in 2020, 2021 about the sustainability practices. For example, too good to go is many times we know that restaurants have perfectly good food, but they have to throw it away because the company policies that they're not going to preserve because they have to maintain certain standards or 4-star, 5-star stuff. And these companies they would be collecting those food and sell it for a discounted price, and the companies would be giving them at 50% price. So basically, they reduce the food waste. Similarly, this Triodos Bank is about ethical banking, right? Again, this is all sustainable practices that they follow. What they do is the bank been doing for many years. Remember, I talked about the banks makes money obviously by loans. So this bank has a policy that they will never invest money into any fossil sector like many other banks do. They will only invest into renewable energy, and they have been doing this for since 1980s, right? So, and they're giving a lot of tips to our customers. So they were able to attract very unique set of customers. They believe in sustainability, right? So even a cutthroat competition, they were able to sustain the customer base because of the practices they do. Right. So we can go on many such examples. I'll take one or two. Let me take a quick show of hands. Is it okay for give a couple of more minutes? If it's okay, then just say okay on the screen. All right, many of you, very good. All right, so thanks. I don't mind going a couple of more minutes. I know our time was till 4:30, but this is quite interesting. So a couple of examples of sustainability into technology, right? See, everybody, including us as a role, there is a temptation to switch the mobile phone every year, right? Maybe you have, many times you have no idea that one iPhone or one 5-to-1 or one Samsung, what goes behind, right? It's so many hundreds of thousands of different tiny particles used into it. The radiations, you name it. I mean, I don't need to explain. In one phone, when we many times we saw that we don't even recycle that phone. We keep that old phone, assuming that it might be useful, and then we order the new phone from Amazon, right? So we can resist. One of the big thing is lithium-ion batteries, right? Or solar panels. That this batteries is also quite polluting. So we need to, of course, driverless car or electric car are good for the environment compared to the fossil fuel, but could be best practices can be followed of handling those batteries. Sustainability in the fashion. I'm going to skip this point because I wanted to show you some really good use case studies of that, which is again one of the case study that I know firsthand because I've been involved in some of their activities. So I'll be able to talk more very precisely. Transportation, it's very obvious that how we talked about it, that instead of planes, we can use the alternative vehicles or online meetings to conduct the meetings. Zero waste, lifestyle. So you will be able to see many examples in our surrounds. So let me stop a screen for a second. I'm going to bring up one really interesting case study to prove the point about even in fashion designing, how the sustainability can play a big role. It was right here. Yeah, got it. So this is one of the leading fashion design brand. Many brands in India, and many of you probably know for your personal interest and whatnot. What is important is the sustainability decision. How did it help them to grow a business? So there you go. Let me enable the screen sharing.